Good morning, Word of Life Church, and all of our faithful YouTube friends and followers. We just want to bring a warm welcome. It's been a wonderful week. I hope that you've managed to stay in faith, and we're not going to walk in fear, but we're going to walk in faith. And you know, the Word says to walk by faith, not by sight. And sometimes that gets very difficult to do, but we're going to look at a few things in Scriptures here today. And one of the most important ones that I think is that the word that keeps coming to me is that are you a believer? Sometimes we can say, well, we believe in God, or do you believe God? And believing God is actually an action. It's something that you do. We know that the word says that you have been given a mustard seed faith. And we know that when you plant that, it can grow exceedingly. So someone that believes in God, can you sort of just passively go through life and believe that God exists, and you know, sort of maybe someday in heaven, in the sweet by and by, you'll get to see him. But we know according to the word, it says that when we believe God, that God likes our faith and it actually moves God. And so we want to look at that a little bit today. And so we're going to go to Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5 and verse 21, it said, when Jesus had crossed again to the other side, many people had gathered him, and he was beside the sea. And one of the rulers of the synagogue named Jairus saw Jesus, and he came and he fell at his feet. How many know that in this situation here, we know Jairus had saw that and had heard that Jesus had done many great things, that miracles had been done, the man that ran, the insane man that ran amongst the tombs, that the devil was cast out of him, that there was people that were blind eyes were open, and so he had heard that Jesus was in town, and in fact that good things could happen, and so it said that he saw him and he fell at his feet. And to me, that represents maybe a place where we are right now in our lives, where we feel like just falling at Jesus' feet because you don't have the answers. Maybe you found that stress and things have really begun to take over, and so much that you're actually wondering which end is up and how you're ever going to make it through the day. But we know that when he said he fell at Jesus' feet and he asked him, and he said, my daughter is lying at the point of death. I ask you to come lay hands on her so that she may be healed. That's important to recognize, that even in the moment of your weakness, even in the moment of your stress or distress, in Jairus' case, he came to Jesus and he asked, and he was very descriptive of what he wanted. He said, I'm asking that my daughter would be healed. And I think sometimes we kind of back off and we say, well, whatever's going to be will be. But we don't see that happening in Scripture here. We see that he came to Jesus, he fell at his feet, but then he was also very, if you would, direct in what he was looking for. And we know that faith moves God. We know that it's faith that pleases God. And so the word says that God is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. And so he said, come and lay your hands on her, and she would be healed, and she will live. And so Jesus went with him. I want you to catch that Jesus immediately went with him. He didn't wait. He didn't waste any time. He didn't say, well, let me think about it. God's will for you is always to move you forward. Sometimes when we go through situations, we may not see it right away. There almost would feel like there's a bit of a delay. But as he stepped out by faith to say, Lord, I'm asking that you would heal. I'm asking that you would come and lay hands on my sick daughter, that she would be healed. And Jesus immediately responded. And then we notice that there was many people that followed him that day. In fact, the woman with the issue of blood, and we've taught on that before, where she had literally spent all, but had none grew better, but rather grew worse. But we notice here that Jesus was on his way. And so as Jesus was stepping out to help him, somebody came along. And if you would, they reached out by faith and grabbed a hold of Jesus traveling. And the word says that virtue left Jesus, and this woman was healed. So much that Jesus spun around and said, who touched me? And everyone said, Master, you're wondering who touched you? When we see so many people thronging you and pressing in and trying to get a hold of you. And so suddenly, Jesus, at that moment, it almost paused and looked like maybe Jairus', if you would, the healing for his daughter was put on a shelf. But we know, according to Scripture, that that's not accurate, nor is that true. And so he kept his attitude right. And I think that that's probably one of the greatest things that we can learn through believing God, is to keep your attitude steadfast Number one, on his love. Number two, keep it in faith. And number three, stay in an attitude of gratitude or knowing that it is going to work out and it is going to work out to your favor and in your behalf. So we know that in that situation, he could have felt helpless. He could have felt resentful. He could have been, there's so many things right now that will try and rob your time. You know, we know that the enemy, he roams around seeking whom he may devour. He used that opportunity to try and if you would, capture Jairus and stop him. We know that he was trying to stop Jairus from staying in faith. Matter of fact, when Jairus, so after the woman with the issue of blood gets blessed and healed and set free, suddenly he hears, oh, don't trouble the master any further because your daughter is dead. Isn't that just like the enemy? When you've stepped out, you've believed God for maybe the longest time. You've been believing his word. You've been standing on those things. And suddenly something comes in the mail or somebody makes a comment. And you say, nevertheless, Lord, at your word, I'm going to believe and I'm going to be healed. We're going to continue this on in just a moment because it looks like we might be running out of time. So I'm going to have to reset my camera. But I want you to catch this. Stay in faith, not in fear. Jesus is still on the way because he's on the throne and he won the victory. I'll be right back.